Hello, my name's Paula Mountain Agar and I'm Customer Services Manager at the main University Library in charge of the circulation or the help desk. So I've been asked to give a brief overview of how we dealt with the implementation of Alma relating to the more customer-focused side of things, working on the help desk and with the frontline staff. One of the things I would recommend is try and network with other Alma libraries. Unfortunately, when we went live, there weren't that many ahead of us. There was Lancaster, Imperial College, etc. But since we've gone live, we've actually hosted probably half a dozen visits from other institutions coming asking us, and I would highly recommend it. It gives you a better overview of how Alma actually works on a day-to-day basis. The other thing that we did in our preparation was also identify your workflows, which ones you have to have, and when you do your testing, how does that work with Alma? But you need to have a degree of flexibility here because obviously changing systems, Alma isn't going to do exactly what you're currently doing. You have to have that ability to think, well, okay, it doesn't work exactly like this. How does it work? That's fine, we can work with that. So before you start your testing, work out what you need to have in place. But as I say, be flexible about it. We've already mentioned the czars. We actually identified staff who we wanted to get involved with the testing phase, people who were quite analytical, didn't mind getting things wrong, because during your testing phase, you are working and thinking, it isn't working how I expected, is it me, is it a bug, is it a configuration change? So you want people who are confident in dealing with that kind of pressure. And we actually were given the Alma sandbox, which was ex libris data, like a sample data. And I have to admit, I think we all struggled with doing the testing at that point, because it wasn't our data, it wasn't our configuration. And it's only around Easter time 2013 that we got we could view our production survey. It wasn't yet live, but we could view our data and our configuration. And because it was more familiar to us, that was at the point we thought we were getting to grips of doing the testing. So, don't be afraid. We waited till April, and then from April, May, and June, we did an awful lot of testing at that point. And already mentioned, the czars, the fulfilment czars, and the rest of the czars did the same kind of thing. To help us understand what we were doing, we actually started writing our documentation. So we could go back and retrace our steps and see where we were. And that actually then developed into training documentation, which we use in our training processes. So I just wanted to highlight the three things that we definitely had to have. And they were, two things, I can't count. These were customer-focused aspects that we needed. Before we started testing with Alma, we'd actually done a loans review, and one of the essential criteria we had to have was for our flexible loan policy was to make sure that we had the functionality to be able to charge fines for items that were recalled and overdue, and Alma didn't have that, so we had to have that functionality. And the other one was, as we mentioned, the bookings functionality. Unfortunately, both these functionalities were released fairly late on in the day, and particularly the bookings one. We were due to go live August bank holiday weekend. We got the bookings functionality in August release. I think there was Vicky and myself, there were only two czars who were available at that point. We had to test this in 4 days. So there was a lot of testing at that point, quite high pressured. And we literally had, as I say at the end, a leap of faith. When we went back to the Alma project group, is it working as we expected? We literally said, we think so. And we had to make the decision then, yes, let's go live with it. It was kind of well, we've done all this testing, we've started all the training, could we really go through this all over again? It was really like, yeah, let's just go for it. Let's just take the leap and see what happens. As one of my colleagues said, nobody will die in this whole process. And the actual launch, positively, from the customer services side of things, the implementation was made on the bank holiday Monday. We were closed. Tuesday, we all came to work. We could issue, we could return, we could pay fines, we could do everything we needed to do on that first day. So that was the good news. The not so good news, as we've already mentioned, was we had no primo, no your search as we call it, for 6 days. That was bad planning on our part. With hindsight, we should have given longer for the users to have their items for. By not doing that, we had lots of emails from our users saying, I can't renew my items. There was lots of communication. It created undue pressure. So, as I say, we coped with all the emails, and I've mentioned here that the staff didn't feel ready. They were very apprehensive about going live, but the fact, because of this curveball we had, not being able to renew, they not only coped with that and going live in the new system, they actually did brilliantly, and we can cope with a crisis due to teamwork. So I think the more staff you involve and the more engagement you get, if something goes wrong, you just naturally support each other and work well in that way. The other thing I was going to mention, because we're the frontline services, is how we communicate to our users. It's really important to let them know we are changing systems. It may be different, you may not be able to do certain things, just bear with us. So a lot of our communication went out before we went live, during the go live, and to date, we still update our customers as what's going on. We're honest about when things go wrong with Alma and your search and Primo, sorry. We actually have a web page that users can actually view and see where things are not working, where there's an improvement or where there's a bug. We actually say, very sorry, something's going wrong here, bear with us, we'll try and get it fixed. And we also announce when something's improved, when it's a good thing, and actually let them know the changes to the system. Just to take a step back again to mention the ZARs, I know we've gone on about this before, but the ZARs we involved with the fulfilment, they were from grade 3, 4 and 5. It was given to them as an opportunity, A, to work collaboratively. It helped them develop skills that some of them hadn't had before, such as presentation skills and creating documentation. But it meant that when you actually went live, you had a core group of staff who also had far more knowledge. Just to deal with it on my own would have just been impossible. So actually having half a dozen staff who knew as much, if not more, about Alma than I did when we were going live was invaluable. So, you know, it really works having that kind of group of people to help. And as I say, the ZARs actually were instrumental in helping with the training. Taking a step back for how the rest of the staff felt about it, there was a lot of apprehension, and it is this timing of when do you think we can actually start the training. Because of the monthly updates, you think if we start too soon, will things change, especially with us being early adopters. So we started our training, I think, July. So we had like a month of training. We had hands-on sessions where staff would come along and we'd do demonstrations, a bit like this, and then they get to actually play with it. They also then use the documentation so they could do the work at their own pace. They worked together. It was really interesting to see staff asking questions of each other and going, how have you done this? Did you know you could do this? Am I doing this right? There was a real good interaction amongst the team. And as I mentioned about the ZARs, they presented the training sessions. And because being frontline services, and I'm sure the rest of you have similar situations, we have a lot of evening and weekend assistants. So when we actually went live, the ZARs were willing to come in evenings and weekends to be support for the team who normally work those hours. So the first time they actually worked a live shift, as it were, with Alma, there was a ZAR there who could answer questions, give them training on the job as well. And I think without that, we would have really struggled getting the staff to the confidence where they are now. When we were going live, or while we were doing the training and after going live, we asked staff to report problems. And that first week, never mind Primo not working properly, there was obviously problems with Alma as well. We actually asked staff to rank the problems, i.e. if it's really high, i.e. it's stopping something happening, it's stopping someone doing what they needed to do, rank it as high, we'll get immediate action on it. It could be a configuration issue, but if we can't fix it, we'll get Ex Libris to fix it. The other way we said, well, if it's a medium problem, if it's something you think, well, it's not ideal, but I found a workaround, rank it as medium, we will get it fixed in due course. And the other way we did it was if it's annoying, in other words, for example, paying fines, at the initial stages you had to do 2 clicks, nothing essential, it's just annoying, then just rank it as low. And all the problems were logged on our fulfilment Google Doc, and anything serious from there I would then escalate to the main project team's documentation to report to Ex Libris. But we actually still use this fulfilment problem log today because problems still occur or suggestions are made or something like that, so we still refer back to it. And 1 year on, staff are finding new workarounds or they're finding new enhancements that weren't in the documentation, so we can actually go, oh, did you know it did this? I didn't see that in documentation. So staff are telling each other where the improvements are as well. I did want to mention the slump. This is something that you'll all go through whenever you go with a new library system. You've got the big haul, the training, the push to go to the go live day, and you think we've hit go live, yes, everything will be brilliant, that's it, we've achieved it. But of course, once you've gone live, you've got all the additional problems you have to deal with, and you do have that little bit of a, whew, and you have to keep staff motivated. I mean, for some reason, staff felt that they weren't providing the same level of service. They were doing really brilliantly, but for their own perception, because they're so customer focused, they felt they didn't know enough, that the students, the customers weren't getting the same level of service. They were. So I would say after you go live, keep them motivated. We rely a lot on cakes. We're big cake eaters at York. Cost me a fortune from the local bakers. And the other thing we also did was we introduced weekly training sessions, which we are continuing today. But the initial idea was to have these weekly training sessions so we could update people, go over training. You know, is there anything else you need to go refresh yourself with? And so initially it was all to do with Alma. Today we still do it. It's less to do with Alma, maybe the odd enhancement, but it's still invaluable for staff, so we've kept it on. So that's one recommendation. If you can implement that, it's definitely worth doing. Mentioning about improvements, a couple of things that would really, again, these are more customer focused, that would be really good if we could get these fixed. Currently, all our records are downloaded via patron load, and these are classed as externally controlled accounts. And unfortunately, we can't change the expiry dates. This is something we used to be able to do on our other system, Aleph, and it's one of those things, you never feel like going to Ex Libris and go, well, on Aleph we could do this. It's a bit like you're telling tales. But it was a really useful functionality on Aleph that we'd like to have on Alma. They are going to fix it, but this is the problem you sometimes find. It can take a while to get that fix in place. We're talking now, I think it's the first quarter of 2015. And with this particular case where we wanted to be able to change expiry dates without them being overwritten, initially Ex Libris didn't see the value in it, so we actually had to make a case for it to say, well, this is why. We had to explain the situations of when we'd want to use this, so be aware that sometimes you have to do that kind of thing. We talked about bookings. Bookings functionality was one of our key things we had to have. And as I say, we had 4 days to test it, and they delivered us something. But it still needs a huge amount of improvement. We use bookings for our 4-hour-long key text collection, but currently users can book to the minute. And this is what we're trying to explain to Ex Libris, that it's really not functional to be able to book to the minute. If someone books from 12:15 to 13:37, how does the next person know when they can book? Because the matching availability doesn't reflect that accuracy. So there's a bit of discrepancy in how that is displayed. And we really want that improving because we are reliant on that for our key text collection. Again, this kind of thing we'll show in this afternoon's fulfilment sessions in more detail. And another thing, again, it's affecting the customers, this is what we'd like fixing, is Alma is really good with their notices. I will give them that. And if an item is recalled, they get a recall notice. But unfortunately, it goes against our flexible loan policy. If an item is cancelled, if a recall is cancelled, we then notify the user. But we don't want to notify the user because that isn't part of our flexible loan policy. But the notices are all bundled together, and we want to have that ability to stop one notice going, but still have the other notice sent. Again, we were sort of told by Ex Libris, yes, this will be available. I think it was supposed to be the November release, but that's now being pushed back to, again, I think the first quarter in 2015. So there's these little things that we'd really like to see improvements on. Having said all this, just to give you the nice thing about Alma, fulfilment, apart from the spelling of it with 2 L's, put that aside, it's a very functional library management system as far as the circulation services go. It does exactly what you expect it to do. There's good functionality in making items claim returned or lost, etc. The emails are really good. Monthly upgrades, as I say, always useful having those to get the new developments. There are minor quirks, a little bit of dead end every now and then. You kind of go one route and you think, I didn't expect to get there, but nothing of great significance. Email notifications. I'm not au fait with HTML, but I can update the email notices, so there's great functionality in there. It copies all the emails you send to the user's account. There's a new functionality come in whereby if you email direct from the user's account, so it's a personal email, it's an ad hoc email, that too will attach to the user's account. So you've got a nice record of what you've emailed the user. So when the user comes back and goes, I didn't get that email, you've got a copy to say, this is the email we sent you. Always really useful. And little nice things like you get a weekly summary report. I think Lancaster only send a weekly summary report. They don't send overdue reminders. We send loads. I think we send way too many. But the weekly summary report is a real nice feature. Every Monday morning, your user will get, this is what you got on loan, these are your charges, this is what you need to renew. So that's really nice. And the other thing is configuration changes. If you go through the configuration training, it does take some getting your head round, I have to admit. But if you make a change, it's immediate. I know on Aleph I'd have to ask Kingsley, can you restart the server? Can you drop a table? Can you do all this? With the configuration changes on Alma, it's immediate. But it is vital to do all your testing on the sandbox. We have a premium sandbox, which is really useful, because any changes you make, as I say, with going live immediately, you need to make sure you're confident in what you're changing. Word of warning on using testing on Alma. I know a few weeks ago I managed to waive everybody's fines. Fortunately on the sandbox, not on the live server, but it was one of those cold sweat moments where you think, thank God I was on the sandbox and not on the... Mind you, I think the students would have been quite pleased if I'd waived all their fines. So that's a very short run through of what we're doing with Alma Fulfilment at the moment.